Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing wonderful today and enjoying your days off because for whoever is out there, it is actually it's a day off for everyone. It's a long weekend.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. And as Maha said her hellos as well. So my hellos, I think, are obviously alongside Maha's
Yes.
hellos as
I
well.
decided to do half because I was like, he's going to do it anyway. So,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
Labor Day, so we're sharing it
Yeah,
now.
so we're sharing it, ladies and gentlemen. It's May 1st today, so it is Labor Day. We do not have any news updates for today, and we do have a public service message, Maha. If you want to go,
With mine?
yeah, I think you can start and then I can follow.
Exactly. So it is linked to the fact that we have today off, but it's about my public service message, our public service message today is the fact that it's about awareness and it's about your responsibility in creating your own awareness for your own rights. Now, what I've noticed is everywhere, this is a global thing, it's just human nature, I think, that we sit there and we complain about situations.
Yeah.
But we don't realize we've actually not done anything in ourselves to increase our awareness or make that situation better. Now, the thing is, you can't complain if you're not doing anything actively to make the situation better. So my thing is that do your research, create awareness of a situation, of your rights, may it be in regards to, your day-to-day rights, legal rights. Last week we had shows on the farmers and stuff. So everyone has a responsibility themselves, and if you do follow Islam and you are Muslim, it is also in your religion. It's about ilm, right? It's about knowledge. And knowledge is power, and the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to deal with life. So that is our public service message for today.
Beautifully said, and then you have to be socially aware too as well. But other than that, there was one more thing which I wanted to
That's what leads to social awareness.
Exactly,
as well.
and then the thing which I wanted to pick up on, Maha, and I think you're going to agree to that, and it is very relevant to Labour's Day as well, and that is that over here within Pakistan, within households, we do have this concept of having maids, people working for you at home as well, and then half of the time we do treat them with we do not treat them very nicely, and this is what I wanted to talk about. Obviously, I never wanted to use the word cruelty.
It is cruelty.
Yeah, it is cruelty because half of the time what happens is that you do not even serve them with food. You only give them a place to live, and then the salary is not up to the mark as well. Whereas I think what we need to do is we need to be more considerate of them because of the fact that they do not belong to some blessed backgrounds, or they're not fortunate enough to probably have the same lifestyles. But other than that, what we can do is that we can probably be humans to them. We can act humane with them as well. For example, what happens is, for example, you said somebody to do something. Now, if they're not feeling well and they come up to you and they say that, sir, I'm not feeling well and I want to take a day off, I know what goes around then. And people just spin their heads around just because of the fact that they're not doing the exact work you wanted them to do. But at times there are situations when people do not feel well. Then I've seen the other fact which I wanted to share over here is, for example, if you go to Centaurus or any other place, you will see a happy couple going, and they've got 3-4 kids, and there's a maid coming at the end as well, and then they sit down to eat something. The maid sits on the other table, your kids and you enjoy the meal while the maid just looks at you. Please do not do that. And what kind of a human would actually do that? That you're having some food, and there sits some unfortunate person who's actually working for you and is not allowed to have the same food you're having.
Just imagine if that was your child or your sister or your brother or your mother or your father. I mean, you wouldn't want that happening to you. Don't do what you don't want to happen to you. Don't do that to other people. So that leads perfectly to our show today. We are observing International Labor Day, and Shazad has done a lot of research as well. We've got a lot of dates and facts and figures for you, and so I will not steal them all. But we are going to be talking about the whole aspect. We're going to talk about what is the relevance within Pakistan, what is our responsibility, and what is up to people, and then also what is the situation globally as well. Because I think, we don't realize that a lot of problems that we're facing here in a developing country are still being faced in a developed world, which is like even in UK, I know we still have problems there, but there's systems in place. So let's find out what the systems are here, and then I'm going to let Shazad take it on.
Yeah, that's very great that you've actually mentioned that. And then at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, whenever we celebrate or observe International Labor Day, the fact behind is what happens on International Labor Day. Obviously, it's a public holiday, but other than that, all of those people who belong to that community, we actually make sure that we praise them for their services. This is what needs to be done on International Labor Day. The best part about Pakistan is that right after our independence, we became a member of the International Labor Organization, which is ILO, and it operates under United Nations as well.
Yes.
But the unfortunate aspect of this is that, the first ever labor right was actually devised in 1972 within our constitution. So if we became the member back in 1947, what took us so long down the line? And other than that, the government is working in a very positive direction.
Yes.
We have decided that, this is going to be the minimum wage. Now, I don't think that it has been implemented so far within the industrial era or the industrial arena of Pakistan as well. There are few people who own these industries, and I've been in conversation with them, and I've asked them that how are you guys are going to go about it. So they say that a few of the industries have actually been on that scale.
Okay.
They're following that rules and regulations as well, but a few of them are not even thinking about it.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing all of these things and what's happening within Pakistan. So to discuss this, we've been very fortunate. We've been joined by Barrister Sheikh Danish Iftikhar. He is a senior journalist at Daily Essas, and he is also our legal expert today as well. Assalamu alaikum, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Besides Barrister Sheikh Danish, we've been joined by Dr. Parveen Ashraf. She is a human rights activist. She's also the director of Potahar Organization for Development Assistance. Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning, Maha.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am, for coming
Shahzad.
over. Thank you very much, Barrister Sahib, for coming over. So let's start with the history of International Labor Day as well, which dates back to the 18th century. So I think, Dr. Sahib, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you for inviting us, and at least this is the first May we take it and we give it to, in the name of the Labor Day or the International Workers' Day in some of the countries it is called. And in 1886, in the hay market of Chicago, when they were protesting, when the laborers were protesting for their 8 hours job,
Exactly.
so during that, some unknown person, which is still being unknown, anonymously, somebody exploited this blast. There was a bomb blast of dynamite, and that police started that firing on the people, and there was including a child and a family, a man who was feeding his kids in his backyard, and many other laborers who were there protesting. They died. Including 7 police officers as well.
Okay.
And that's how, then they were blamed, almost 7 or 8 anarchists were blamed for this. And then some of them were punished. They were, and some were, one among them who were accused committed suicide in the prison. And later this was in USA, in the Illinois, I think, that the new governor came and he really he forgave them, and he said, this was, even he objected and criticized the kind of case discussion.
Okay, wonderful. So now that was a brief history, and we've done shows on that. So if you want to get more of the history, you can also find it online, and you can go back to the previous shows. But now regarding Pakistan's situation, Barrister Sheikh Danish, we'll get you involved in a moment. But regarding Pakistan's situation, we joined the first, like you said, the first labor law was devised in 1972. 1972. 42, we didn't exist. So what's happening within Pakistan? Why did it take us so long?
Actually, the moment Pakistan was established, as Shahzad shared, that in 1947 we got members of the ILO and all this. But I think the issue, why it took so long, it took in 1977, the first labor law was constituted, was our own democratic, in discontinuity in the democratic processes.
Right.
There were long martial laws and bans on trade unions. And the environment really, it was early 1970s, and it was before 77, that was the environment where properly democracy, labor laws, or any kind of human laws, or anything that is to do with the democracy and individuals' rights, was the environment was then given, and legislations have occurred during that period, because our first constitution was constituted in 1972.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly,
Right.
that's what it is. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share a very amazing fact, and that is that, not globally the International Labor Day is observed on May 1st. In Canada
No,
and in USA, it's
USA.
the 1st of September, I think, or the first
First
Monday of
Monday.
September.
Doesn't
Yeah,
have to be different. Huh? It doesn't
yeah.
have to
So
be.
it's first Monday of
Monday of
September as well, and
September.
it's an unofficial saying that, the summer has ended. That's how they go about it.
Ah, okay.
But other than that, now what I want to ask is, how do you look at the Labor's Day, Barrister Saab, and what do you think is the importance of observing such days as well?
Well, I think basically the most significant aspect of this celebrating or observing this Labor Day is that it is the working class itself, the class which works hard and toils hard in the sun and unforgiving circumstances, unforgiving weather, and they create towards the economy of the country and to the global market of the world.
Exactly.
And their significance can never be undermined. It can never be understated. It's very important. And we must also remember that many movements in this world have been the proletariat movements of the labor class movement, like Marxist, tendencies. These have occurred, and these have resulted in revolutions in many countries and change of, the systems in many countries, as happened in the Soviet Union, as happened in China, elsewhere as well. So it is the labor class which brought about these movements and which was so important in carrying out these movements and making them successful. And in effect, that made a huge change in the global system. We all of us know what happened in the mid-60s, mid-70s, the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a movement, it was a capitalist movement against a communist movement.
Exactly.
So it was basically, and these, polarization of forces in the world, these occurred because the labor class itself, it found out, it achieved that kind of significance. It realized its own power, and then when the power it was distributed among the classes of the people, the social movement which came about, that brought about a huge change in the history of this in this
But
world.
how do you think all of these movements have actually helped the labor class to probably progress in a better way?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I would say that in Pakistan, for instance,
Let's
we
keep
saw,
the Pakistan because that's a huge question, and that the whole
Yeah.
show can be spent on answering that question.
Yes, I was just going to mention that in Pakistan, there was a movement in the early 1970s,
Yeah.
late 1960s, in which Zulfikar Ali Bhutto of Pakistan People's Party, he brought out that slogan of Roti, Kapda and Makan. And that slogan, it drew quite a bit of resonance, and it was, shared by the working class of this country. And that working class, then came out in the streets, and then the working class voted in favor of this socialist tendencies, and we saw the government of Pakistan People's Party. But then, in effect, that dream or the vision of the working class was not translated into reality.
Yeah.
And, even though we carried out nationalization, but that did not bring out a huge or drastic change in the living conditions of these workers of Pakistan.
Right.
So that was basically, so that dream, when it was not realized, the working class, again, it was, it became a bit confused. It did not know how to translate its, vision for the country, for its conditions, and therefore it got a bit disillusioned. So in effect, what happened afterwards is, even though we had a few elections and we had democracies, but no party was able to communicate with the working class in that manner was able to do so in 1960s and 70s.
Okay, so now moving from the 70s, now then going into the 80s, 90s, what happened subsequently? Because we were trying to build it up to 2017.
Yeah. And then, as a human rights activist, how do you see the importance of this day?
Yeah, Shahzad and Mahabod and I agreeing to disagree a little bit. Most of it
No,
I
no,
agree.
absolutely, you're more than welcome to.
Actually, it was early 70s that where the thought of self-respect, self-dignity, recognition of human work, recognition to human labor was given, that ideology was flourished, that thought and insight was disseminated in Pakistan during this era. After 1977, my God, then long martial law, even, women were not allowed to protest, and all the trade unions were banned except for one religious, Jamaat Islami, in the schools and universities. Other than all the trade unions and everybody was banned, and nobody could speak for their rights.
Yeah.
Like if you talk of these labor rights, you forget about the labor rights, even these upper class women, And general women activists, when they protested in Lahore on 12th of May, how they were attacked.
All right.
So like Habib Jalib got attacked. But then that was the environment when Habib Jalib, Faiz Ahmad Faiz and all these revolutionary poets were there. We grew up in that environment. Today, change is the only constant thing.
Exactly.
And technology changes, needs change. So in Pakistan, particularly today's labor class, whether be the women domestic laborers, be on the street, even government employees, laborers, we all are laborers because we're working to someone,
Exactly.
some organizations and government, we all are laborers. Laborer doesn't mean that we are working in the factory only. We all work and we all need our regulation of our rights. But, like a very tiny thing, if you see on the streets when you get up and you're coming to your offices, you often witness women, they're holding tiny kids, infants, and they are brooming, even if they are not given just tiny little gloves, using gloves when they are, handling with the trash and using, like just a small
Mask.
mask, and it's not very expensive.
Yeah.
So and at the domestic level, when we talk of the domestic environment, you already said you reflected upon it. We have to respect them. Individual dignity.
Exactly.
Implementing on 15,000 or 13,000, that is government has done, and we have to implement on that. Giving them little space in the.
We will definitely talk about the implementation of the laws.
Yeah.
But other than that, what we're trying to get to know, or what we're trying to, what we want you to say to all our amazing viewers who are out there is to make them aware. This is what our sole responsibility is. But to make them aware, first of all, we want to know about this transition. Okay, for example, if the first ever Labor Act was devised in 1972, just because of the fact that the Constitution came into being then, as a matter of fact, how do you think we have evolved over these labor laws and the implementations from 1970s till 2017?
In 1970, as we say, until 1977, the environment was democratic, though it started in 1976, all turmoil began, political turmoil, and then after long 11 years of martial law, all trade unions were banned, and there was no system, and whatever, there was, during martial laws, and martial laws have ruled your country more than, and for a longer period than the democratic system.
Exactly.
So in this environment, most of the trade unions were banned. But still, as I said, still these poets were there.
Okay.
The environment was there. Though we did not have this cyber world, we did not have this social media. And even TV, if you say only PTV2 was there, but still there were talks were going on the human rights, on the labor
environment
rights.
was
The environment changed.
So now, so
the
that's
corporate thinking, shifting to corporate thinking.
Okay, perfect. So we've got that. Now let's bring it now to the modern times. Now, the environment was there even in the 80s, despite not being democratic at certain points in history, the environment and the thoughts were still there. People were still interested, and they had the awareness of what, dignity and self-respect and working conditions. But then, what have we been seeing in the last 2 decades, Barrister Danish? Like, we've been moving towards the right direction? Because there's been, even now we're seeing certain drafts being drafted regarding, child labor laws, etc. So what's happening recently?
Well, I think there's always room for improvement, and as
You're always here telling us that, we know that, but what are the improvements so far from like the 1990s and like the 2000s?
Well, the minimum pay, for example, I'll just give you an example. The minimum wage has been increased, It was very low about 10 years ago. It was about 6,000 or 4,000 at that point in time. Whereas now it's almost touching 15,000.
Okay.
But I think this is just an example I just quoted. But the main thing, I think the main issue or the main problem is that we do have these laws on paper.
Okay.
We do have legislation. And
But that's the thing, we want to now discuss these laws on paper first, then we'll talk about the implementation and where we're falling short. So what are these laws on paper, and what is the awareness level of it?
Well, there is a broad variety of laws available at this point in time. And for instance, our Constitution guarantees that there will be no discrimination. And but we do carry out this discrimination.
No discrimination in terms of what?
In terms of sex,
Gender
religion,
disparity.
race,
Gender, religion,
any
everything.
basis of exploitation or any. So, but in effect, what we do not have these kind of laws being implemented. If we go in our workplaces, there is harassment being taking place of women, for instance. So that we have laws against harassment, but we can't stop that even though we have laws.
Okay.
So the main problem is not whether we have these laws or not. The main problem is going according to the spirit of the laws, being aware of your rights, and being able to implement those laws.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So having the laws there, it's very important. But the thing is, then it's the awareness. So this is when we were talking about in our introduction, the responsibility of oneself to know what the laws are and to get them implemented. Dr. Praveen, what do you feel about this? That the laws are there, but they're not being implemented.
Apart from before that, coming to that, Maha, I will like to reflect upon the issue that bonded labor was there.
Yes.
You know, Bata Mazdoor and Asma Jahangir, Hina Jilani, and all these people have struggled during all this 18 martial law time for bonded labor, and then these labor laws came into, you know. Then child labor, you know, now the minimum age for child is 18 years. However, it's for the labor is it's 14 years. The discrepancy is there. And then there are laws for the hours, you know, 8 hours for everyone. So these laws are there. In terms of implementation, Maha, what we see is that government, even whatever government has done, there is a gap of the availability of the means, whether in the form of laws,
The opportunities, yeah.
or the opportunities and privileges and the rights, legal or otherwise, and the public.
All right.
You know, translating these and getting them transforming, taking it to the public.
Exactly.
And here, the civil society comes, which is the responsibility of the civil society is that translate these laws and available tools or techniques or whatever means are there on the rights, translate them in the local language, in the culturally sensitive means, in the local Potawari language, in the Pashto, Brushesky, Sindhi, and then take it to the awam.
Exactly.
To take it to the public and communities is the real task.
That's a very valid point, and you know it is all about awareness, and you should actually use all the mediums which are available. But other than that, you know, ladies and gentlemen, to highlight the importance of International Labor Day, I think how I would love to do it is that, you know, it is a day where, you know, all of those concerns which obviously relate to the labor class as well, they need to be heard. Now, for example, let's start talking about all of those problems which people do face in this time. You can think of a few as well while I start saying. Okay, first of all, for all those...
I can tell you, I don't need to think of them.
For all those people who work within the government institutions and have got regular jobs, obviously they do get all the rights. They do have a month's week, you know, they can take a month's leave as well.
Sick pay,
yeah, they will
health.
get a sick pay, they will get everything else as well. But what about all those other people who are daily wagers? If they do not even turn up at work while they are sick, they cannot even apply for a sick leave, they do not get paid. People, for example, ladies who get pregnant or who deliver a baby over here, they do not have any right of maternity leaves. Other than that, they do not have any daycare centers. And then, you know, there is generally, this has been witnessed that men are being paid more than women, even if they're working for the same designation and the same organization. These are a few of the core problems which we need to cater to. But right now, I think we need to go for a short break. When we come back, Maha will pick up on a few of others as well, and we'll find out a way.
You've highlighted the main important ones, and I think we'll
I
focus
think
on those.
these are the main important ones. And what about all of those people who come on daily basis? You know, they need that job security as well. They need to pay their hospitality bills as well. And then, you know, if the institutions are not going to look after them, I don't think that you're going to actually prosper in terms of economic growth.
But I think also another thing is that, yeah, there are certain ground level, like generalized rights that one should have, and then it depends on your contract. But let's go for a short break, and when you come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
Good morning.
We have to talk about that.